So tell folks when the next moment is going to be in the trial process.
So we finished phase one. The trial, first of all, is broken into three phases. Through case management with the Justice Hennessy and the legal teams. There's four legal teams, by the way, in the case. I didn't mention that the Robinson Superior case, which deals with the identical wording in the Robinson Superior Treaty as the Robinson Huron Treaty, they are along bringing their case along at the same time as the Robinson Huron case in the court. So they have a legal team there as well. So four legal teams, Robinson Huron, Robinson Superior, Ontario, and Canada, dealing with this case with Justice Hennessy. They did case management meetings, and in the case management meetings they decided, they made some decisions on some things, that how they were going to proceed with the case. And I got off the rails.
I don't think you did.
No.
I think we're with you.
Okay.
I think though that I think there's a whole other conversation to be had about. I think there's lots more to say about the ceremonies and the way that's becoming part of the case, and I'd love to have that conversation another time. I was wondering if there was anything you'd like to add for this conversation, first of all, and then if there's any advice or words you have for folks out there who are trying to take up this struggle within the context of Canada.
Okay. Well, what Justice Hennessy and lawyers decided to do is to break the case up into three phases. Phase one was a simple determination: is there a legal obligation in the treaty for the Crown to increase the annuities?
That's phase one.
That was phase one. Once the judge makes a decision on that, it's either a go forward or it stops. We lose, one or the other.
And when is that judgment coming?
That judgment is expected in December of this year.
Okay. So December 2018.
Yeah. So once we get by that, phase two of the trial has to do with legal, technical arguments that come with these types of cases that go into court. One is doctrine of laches, which basically means, to me anyway, and I'm just a layperson here, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm just saying that my understanding of that is you took too long to bring your case to court, then you can't bring it to court now because it prejudices the other party. The other one is statute of limitations. Statute of limitations says, okay, if we owe you money, you can't go back way back. That's too prejudicial. You can only go back so far. We don't think that's a fair argument, but that's for the judge to determine. And there's another one called res judicata, which means that the case has already been determined. There was a case in the 1890s between Canada and Ontario because of what happened in 1867 when the
Constitution?
When the BNA Act came into force.
Mm-hmm.
There was arguments between Canada and Ontario because the province of Ontario became responsible for Ontario,
mm-hmm.
Quebec for itself, the rest of the provinces. Well, federal government said, well, Ontario is collecting all the money, so they should pay the annuity. Ontario said no. The treaty was signed with the Crown, which now the federal government is a representative of the Crown in Canada, so they should continue to pay. So anyway, this case went to trial. I think Canada, federal government lost. I think they had to, because they continued to pay the annuity. But at the same time, in those presentations, I guess, during that trial,
which I'm sorry, that was in 1867? Or like in response to?
It was in the 1890s, I believe.
Okay.
Somewhere, I can't remember exactly the date.
You have to know history, you have to know the law, you have to know.
Yeah. So anyway, in this case, they said in that case that $4 was the limit, I guess, you know. Somebody said $4 is the limit in this case. You know, that's all that's owing in this case. So once the judge made or whoever was making decision at the time said it's $4 annuity, you know, that's what it is. Well, First Nations were not party to that. And we would certainly have objected to that had we been party to that case. So we don't think that res judicata in this case is a very strong argument,
But Canada has asserted res judicata in the Robinson Huron case.
yes.
So what if your average non-Indigenous Canadian hears this and thinks that's terrible, they shouldn't have done that? What can they do? Can they call up their MP and say, we want Canada not to make this fallacious argument? What do people do? How can folks support?
Yeah, and you know, I don't know, like these are legal matters, you know. I don't know that a person on the street can tell somebody, I don't think you should make that argument in court and you should drop it, you
But
know?
I think the thing for me is that, you know, I'm paying for Canada to make these arguments. I'm paying for them to hire these, in many cases, hack historians.
Mhm.
So I feel like I should be able to say, I don't want you to hire those folks. I don't want you to say those things because they're on speaking on my behalf, are they not?
Then if we get by this phase 2, which is those legal technical arguments, phase 3 of the case, if we get by all of those and we're still successful, we're still going through the court system, phase 3 is determining the amount of compensation owing. So that's where we hope to be at some point. We hope to be able to do that in between while the case is going. We hope to be able to sit down with Canada and Ontario and say, how can we settle this without going through the whole process of going through the court system?
Which is an offer you have put on the
Mhm,
table
that's
since the very beginning. You have always been ready to sit at a side
Right.
table and talk.
That's right. In 2012, we took this case to the Attorneys General of Canada and Ontario, and we said to both Crown governments, here's the case. We are prepared to take this case to court. We're asking you to sit down and settle the matter out of court. We didn't get any responses from that.
So they didn't even say no, they just didn't.
Really, they didn't say no. They didn't
just
say
didn't even
yes.
say anything.
They didn't say anything, really.
Ouch.
So, 2 years later, 2014,
There you go.
we launched our case in court. We had a ceremony in Sudbury. We had a sweat lodge. We had a pipe ceremony. We had a sacred fire there. And we had a teaching session where we invited elders to come in and talk to us about what treaties mean. Alan Corbier, who's one of the elders that we use, he's very knowledgeable when it comes to the Crown Indigenous relationship in the area. He spoke about these treaty belts, how they're interpreted by Anishinaabe people. It was really an interesting time, and so we launched the case in court in 2014. Here we are today.
Here we are.
Yep.
Here we are. What's your word for the people out there?
I think that, you know, if someone wants to help with this, I think it's important to help us to get the word out, because this case doesn't only involve First Nation people, not just the people of the 21 First Nations here and the government. It includes everybody. It involves everybody. This case, depending on how it comes out of the court, will have huge ramifications for other treaties across Canada. So if you're an Indigenous person and you want the courts to understand how you understand a treaty in Canada, you should talk to people about that. You should you should bring that stuff out. Today with social media, you can do all of those kinds of things, and you can do them often and get the word out, you know. Let people know that this is happening. Make sure that people understand what the issues are. do some research, and try to put those things forward, and so that in the end we can all live in a better society in our country. Miigwech.
Maybe.